Rancher sat alone with a hungry baby, after his wife passed until she knocked with full breasts. The land was silent. Frost still clung to the dying grass outside the weather-worn cabin. A thin wisp of chimney smoke curled toward the pale morning sky, dissolving into nothing. Inside, it was no warmer than grief. Wood walls, bare floors, a baby's soft whimper. The kind that breaks more than silence. Eli sat in the only chair left standing, his elbows on his knees, his hands shaking around a chipped tin cup that held cold coffee and something like sorrow. The crib beside him creaked with every weak kick of his baby boy's feet. Hungry again, always hungry. Since Sarah died in childbirth, time had gone quiet. Days bled into each other like rain on dust. The ranch had fallen still. The cattle grazed wild. Letters remained unopened. He couldn't look at the cradle without seeing her blood. Couldn't hold the baby long enough to stop his own hands from trembling. This morning, like the last, the bottle was empty. No milk, no mother. Just a rancher who smelled like sweat and death, and a baby slowly fading into silence. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. Hesitant, not urgent. The kind of knock that almost apologized for its existence. Eli froze. No one had come down the ridge road in months. He reached slowly for the rifle beside the door, then stopped halfway. There was no strength left in him for suspicion. He opened it. There she stood. A woman, wrapped in a heavy shawl, cheeks red from the cold, eyes darker than winter, and 2 full breasts heavy beneath the wool. She didn't speak, didn't smile, just looked past him, toward the crying child behind his shoulder. And in that still second, the cold wind didn't matter. The shame on Eli's face didn't matter. Something ancient passed between them. Grief, recognizing grief. Hunger, recognizing nourishment. And the silence broke with nothing but breath. She stepped inside without asking. The door closed softly behind her, as if even that sound should not disturb the ghost of Sarah still hovering in the corners. Eli stood there, his boots frozen to the floor, watching this stranger kneel before the crying baby, not with panic, not with words, just calm, tired grace. She lifted the infant, like she had done it 1,000 times, cradled him, unwrapped herself, bared her breast. The crying stopped. Eli couldn't breathe. There was something in the way her shoulders curved over the child, not hunger or pity. Something else. A woman who'd known hunger herself. Maybe worse. Her cheek was bruised faint, yellowed, healing, but not old. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Eli turned away, jaw locked, eyes staring into the cracked wood of the wall as the sound of suckling filled the room like thunder. Shame moved through him like smoke. Shame for feeling relief. Shame for letting her do this. Shame for being too broken to save his own blood. His mind flickered. The war. Not just the bullets. The waiting. The shaking hands. The boy they left behind in a trench because he was too far gone. The smell of rot. Sarah screaming in blood-soaked sheets, her hand clawing his as she slipped under. The woman didn't ask for his name. She didn't ask for anything. When the baby finished, she rocked him, her arms trembling slightly, as if she hadn't slept in days, maybe more. Her coat was patched, her boots were too thin for the cold. She looked like someone who had run until there was nowhere left to run. "Why are you here?" Eli asked quietly, almost afraid of the sound of his own voice. She didn't answer. He could throw her out. Say nothing. Keep the baby. Keep the silence. Let the past bury her like it tried to bury him. But when he looked at her, he didn't see a stranger. He saw himself. The part of him that hadn't spoken since Sarah died, the part that kept waking up for the baby, the part that hadn't given up, not completely. She laid the child back in the crib with a care only grief could teach. Then she walked to the door, as if ready to leave. "Wait," Eli said. Just one word. Not an invitation, not a rescue. A decision. It began with the sound of horses, distant, uneven, heavy hooves dragging across frozen dirt. Eli heard it first before sunrise, standing by the window, watching steam rise from the coffee he wouldn't drink. She was already up, bundled again, rocking the baby in silence. "They'll come here," she said, not looking at him. "Who?" She hesitated, then simply said, "Men." The way she said it, flat, factual, made his stomach turn. Eli stepped outside, scanned the tree line. Nothing yet. But the ridge road was soft clay this time of year. It held tracks. "They your kin?" he asked. "No." "Who then?" She placed the baby back in the crib, careful as always, like the child was the only soft thing left in the world. Her eyes stayed low. "One of them is the father. The others, make sure no one runs." Eli felt a hard chill slip under his ribs. She pulled up her sleeve. A faded brand marked her wrist, not cattle. A letter, burned in. Her silence had always been heavy. Now it felt unbearable. "They buy women like land," she whispered. "Keep the babies, sell the girls, shoot the rest." Eli swallowed. Something inside him roared and collapsed at once. He looked at the crib. The baby slept, belly full for once. His tiny hands curled into fists. "Did you kill someone to get away?" Eli asked. She didn't blink. "Yes." Outside, the wind picked up. It carried no words, only warning. Eli didn't need more. He'd seen this before, in border towns, in backroom barns during war. Men who claimed ownership with guns and names carved in leather. They didn't come for justice. They came to reclaim what they thought was theirs. He moved through the cabin, checking the rifle, counting bullets. Not enough. He hadn't loaded more than one shell a day since Sarah died, just in case. The woman stood by the crib now, still and quiet, like she'd already lived her ending. "You could hand me over," she said. "Say I stole something, they'd believe you." Eli stared at her. "You got a baby to raise." The implication hung in the room like dust in the morning light. He stepped to the door, pulled it open, looked out again. Still nothing on the road. But the horses were closer now. "You stay here," he said. "Keep him warm." "Why?" He didn't answer. Because men like that had taken too much already. Because Sarah had screamed and no one came. Because a rancher was still a man, and a man still had a choice. The cabin stayed silent that afternoon. No one rode up yet, but the air was tight, like breath held too long. Eli moved through the day, like a man expecting the sun to fall hard and fast. He found her outside, chopping kindling with sleeves rolled and jaw set. Her fingers bled slightly where the axe handle rubbed raw. He didn't speak, just took the axe, finished the pile, then showed her how to grip it better. Their hands touched, briefly, rough skin, brushing raw skin. No words, just breath, and wood, and distance closing. Later, he laid out the rifle on the table, cleaned it, slowly, deliberately. She watched. He noticed how her eyes tracked every motion, not like someone new to danger, but someone ready to meet it again. He slid the rifle across to her. She held it, heavy, familiar. "You ever fired one?" he asked. She nodded. He set up bottles on the fence. They didn't talk. The shots rang out one by one, sharp cracks in the silence of the land. She missed twice, hit once. He didn't praise her, just nodded. Respect, quiet and level, like equals on borrowed time. That evening, she cooked. Thin rabbit stew. Nothing seasoned, but warm. Eli sat across the table holding the baby who had finally begun to sleep without fists clenched. She watched the keen, two of them, then said without looking up, "I had a boy." It came out flat, no drama, just a truth laid down like firewood. Eli didn't ask. "He'd be 5 now, if they hadn't." She stopped. The spoon in her hand stilled. Eli looked at the scar above her brow. One he hadn't seen before, hidden under her hairline, long, jagged. It spoke louder than anything else she'd said. He stood, walked outside, came back with something wrapped in canvas, an old picture frame. Inside, Sarah, and a baby blanket she never got to use. He placed it on the table between them. She stared at it. He said, "She died in the cold. I couldn't keep her warm." No one cried. No one needed to. The candle flickered. The stew cooled. The baby snored softly in Eli's arms. And for one long, aching hour, the world outside didn't exist. They didn't fall in love. They didn't confess. They just breathed in the same pain and let it live between them like a fire too small to see, but too hot to ignore. They came at dusk. 3 men on horseback, dust trailing behind them like smoke from hell. No names, just wide hats, rifles slung low, and faces carved by greed. Eli stood on the porch, rifle in hand. The baby was inside. So was she. The lead man dismounted, broad, with leather gloves too clean for a ranch hand. His boots sank slightly in the thawing mud. "We're here for what's ours," he said, voice like rust. No emotion, just business. Eli said nothing. "She came here," the man continued. "Took something that didn't belong to her." The second man laughed, a short, mean sound. "Reckon you don't want trouble, old man. Just hand her over." Eli looked past them. No badge, no law, just men used to taking, used to being feared. "She ain't property," Eli said finally. The third one raised his rifle just a hair. Inside, the door creaked open. She stood there, shawl wrapped tight, holding the baby. "No," Eli whispered, too late. She stepped forward. "I'll go." The baby whimpered in her arms. The lead man smiled, thin and cruel. "That's more like it." But Eli stepped between them, slowly, deliberately. "She stays. You'll die for her?" Eli's voice came low, steady. "Already did." Came back for the boy. The moment stretched. 1 breath, then 2. Then the third man moved, finger twitching toward the trigger. Eli fired first. The shot rang out like thunder. The man dropped, screaming, not dead. The others reached for their weapons. She moved too, not away, but toward them. In the chaos, Eli was hit, left shoulder, flesh tore. He dropped to one knee. Then came the twist. The woman, the quiet one, the mother, the fugitive, pulled a hidden revolver from inside her shawl, fired twice, one clean through the second man's throat. He collapsed like a sack of bones. The lead man froze, eyes wide. "You raised me," she said coldly. "You branded me. You sold my baby." Eli stared, breath caught. "I buried him in the frost," she added, "and I swore I'd kill the men who made me dig with my own hands." The lead man stepped back, gun shaking. But she didn't shoot. She let him go. Eli sat in the mud, bleeding, watching her lower the gun with calm hands. "You had that the whole time?" he asked, coughing. She looked down at him, voice flat. "Didn't trust myself to use it. Till you stood first." Then she knelt beside him, wrapped his wound, pressed her forehead to his. And outside, the last man fled into the dark. But he wouldn't sleep easy again. Snow began to fall that night. Soft, slow, like ash after the fire. The porch was stained with blood and gunpowder, and the cabin breathed like a wounded animal. Eli sat on the edge of the bed, shirt torn, shoulder wrapped in old rags that smelled of whiskey and iron. His breath came shallow, not from pain, from everything else. She moved around the room quietly, gathering, packing, not rushing, just moving. The baby slept in a crate by the fire, warm and small, unaware of the war that had cracked open the earth hours ago. No one said a word. Outside, she dragged the bodies one by one, buried 2 near the trees, left the third, the one who raised her, sitting slumped against a fence post, eyes open but emptied out. She wiped her hands on the snow. Eli watched her from the doorway. The sky above was bruised with stars. "You should leave," he whispered, almost to himself. She didn't respond, just stared into the woods. "I'll make up a story. Say you saved us. No lawman's gonna look too close." Still, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she stepped back inside, unwrapped the shawl, laid it gently across the crib. Eli noticed something for the first time, the way her shoulders no longer curled inward, the way her eyes didn't search the shadows, the way she looked at the baby now, not like a burden, but like breath. She knelt beside him, touched his wounded hand. "You stood first," she said, voice low. "I didn't want to," he answered. "But you did." He nodded. Couldn't speak more. She leaned in, placed a hand over his. Rough, scarred, still warm. The storm outside thickened. Wind howled across the plains. Inside the cabin, only the fire spoke. They didn't ride away. They didn't run. They just stayed. Like roots too stubborn to tear loose. Like ghosts choosing not to haunt anymore. In the quiet, Eli looked at her. Truly looked. Not as a stranger. Not as a woman who'd wandered in. But as someone who had buried more than names and still carried warmth in her hands. She reached for the baby, held him, rocked him. And for once, Eli didn't feel like death had the final word. Spring came late that year. The snow melted in thin ribbons down the hills, grass returned in patches, the wind softened. Life, stubborn as it was, crept back in. The cabin stayed standing. Eli rebuilt the fence, one post at a time. His shoulder never healed right, but he worked anyway. The kind of work that didn't ask questions, just steadied the hands. She stayed too, didn't say why, didn't need to. Every morning she fed the baby first, then fed the silence. She planted herbs near the back wall, chopped wood wet, the steadier grip. Rode into town once, alone, came back with cloth and sugar and books. They didn't call it home, but they didn't leave it. There was a grave now behind the barn, small, unmarked, beside Sarah's. One evening she laid a single button on it, one she'd kept in her pocket since the night she ran. It was from a coat that belonged to a boy she never got to bury. She didn't cry, just pressed it into the dirt like a seed. Eli watched from the porch, holding the baby, who now giggled when the wind touched his face. He didn't ask what the button meant. Some things are better carried in silence. At night, they sometimes sat by the fire, not talking, just breathing the same air. Her with a needle and thread, him with a mug and memory. The baby between them, small hands always reaching for something unseen. Time passed. People in town began to forget what had happened. Or maybe they chose to. Stories, after all, only stay sharp if you keep sharpening them. The ranch changed. Fences rose straighter, horses returned, the land healed in places they didn't. But they didn't need to be whole, just enough to keep going. On the boy's second birthday she baked bread. He smashed it with both hands. Eli laughed for the first time in months, a raw, cracked sound that didn't feel like it belonged to a dying man anymore. And later that night, long after the candle went out, she whispered one thing into the dark. "We survived." Eli didn't answer. He just reached for her hand, gently, quietly, and held on. Outside, the wind moved across the plains. Inside, nothing moved at all.